Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities Coaching YouTube channel. Welcome to those of you who are new. Welcome back to those of you seasoned veterans of what we do around here. What we do around here is bring about conversations of a psychological, mental health, emotional health paradigm. We do that as often as we can, usually several times per week. We try to make that connection as beneficial as possible. And we do that for your listening pleasure, continuing to do so in a good way. In any event, we continue to foray into that as best we can. Couple of ways to reach out at PO Perception on Twitter. We've got over 1,400 of these for your listening pleasure and continue to add that. Signs that your depression is getting worse is the concept of today's audio. And if you are dealing with depression or other mental, emotional, or just roadblock related stuff, would love to be of assistance to you at PO Perception or in the About Me section of this YouTube page. Either one will get you in connection with the my team or with me, and we can make something happen. So your depression's getting worse. There's a lot of ways to know that. One is you're getting lonelier even though you are feeling more withdrawn. So on one hand, it's almost like a catch-22 situation. You get lonelier, but you never really feel that much better. You get lonelier, but you never really feel like life is going in the direction you want it to go. And so therefore, the loneliness never gets really better because you don't really feel like being social. But at the same time, when you're not social, you feel more disconnected. The inability of sleep on a consistent basis is also something you become extremely stressed out about, something you become extremely worried about. Life doesn't go the way you want it to go, and ultimately you end up in a direction that isn't necessarily a good thing. You end up either where you're oversleeping on a consistent basis to deal with depression or your anxiety, or you end up with the opposite, obviously, insomnia, which can be, I've got to find solutions to my problems. Now I'm more tired than when I began, which means we're more prone to addiction-related behaviors. We're more prone to other challenges in that direction, and ultimately leading things in a less than meaningful perspective in what we actually want out of life. The next thing there is guilt. People can leverage guilt against us when we are in that space on a pretty continual basis without our intention, our permission, or the integrity of trying to do things in the right way. When we begin to understand or feel a level of guilt that isn't necessarily fair or isn't justified or isn't in a healthy way, ultimately it ends up becoming a struggle, and things don't balance out in the way that we intend them to. And so if people are leveraging our guilt, we're only going to feel worse, which is going to make us feel more depressed. Leverage of guilt is making us feel guilty for things that either aren't ours or are disproportionate in the level at which we can handle things because we're dealing with depression or other health related challenges. And so the struggle becomes, how do we hold our own space without getting negatively impacted and ultimately, lead ourselves in a direction that doesn't serve us well when we don't necessarily understand how to continue that connective. And I will continue that after grabbing my phone. We'll be back in two shakes of a lamb's tail right after this. Again, as we kind of go forward, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. It's just kind of there. In any event, so I mean, obviously, worthlessness is something that a lot of people deal with when they're dealing with depression. We can't see ourselves articulate in a positive light, or it's difficult to see oneself in a positive light when we don't feel we have the value that we'd like to have from a personal or professional or emotional level. And so when we don't have the level we want to have, we often don't see our value, or we allow other people to determine our value. And that can be super negative in a constructed way for a number of reasons. So the next thing there is kind of moving things forward in a direction towards, many people that deal with depression have continual numbness, emotionally speaking, and so that can become problematic when a person feels continually emotionally numb, as though their life doesn't move forward or they're stuck, and they feel constantly out of balance, out of sorts, and ultimately in a negative space there. So hopefully this has been helpful. I encourage you to keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Till next time, everybody.